The most effective way that I've found to book publishers all comes down to two factors: timing and your offer. Right when a publisher is about to launch Kickstarter, or if they're delivering a Kickstarter, or if they're launching games in retail, that is the perfect time to catch them. Why? Because they are looking actively for content creators to make things surrounding their beautiful game. They're looking for content creators to highlight and showcase their board game. I think you actually underplay yourself if you then proceed to use that timing to then say, hey, I'll go ahead and do a review for you. Instead, you want to give a very specific offer, a very, very specific offer that is tailored to your channel, tailored to what you do best, and most importantly, tailored to what they are missing or what they need. Preview videos or previews where they're comparing part 1 to the brand new part 2. Previews that include, social media promos as part of your package, or previews that have one extended round of gameplay footage alongside it. Maybe you're primarily a photographer, a product photographer, a board game photographer. That's fine. How about 20 product photos and 20 lifestyle photos? If you want to market yourself, capitalize on the perfect timing and a strong, compelling offer that shows that you are dedicated to put in the work to highlight their game as best as possible. Welcome to episode 17 of Revamped. Ooh, do I have an episode for you today? All right, content creators, beautiful people listening in all around. How are you all doing? Today is kind of an extension from the last episode where I talked about booking clients, but we're going to focus specifically on marketing yourself. Why? Well, my friend, actually, Sons of Thunder Games, who, by the way, takes some beyond next level photography. Please check them out on Instagram. I'll link it right over here. Believe me, if you want to see photos that you can hang in an art gallery, like the one over here in the studio tour, they are the ultimate duo for that. And also the ones that inspired me to do this episode. Nathan, if you are listening, I'm sorry for the delay, but I never ever forgot. This one is for you, my friend. Okay, let's go ahead and address probably the first thing that you're thinking of, probably the most generalized statement and action that everyone tells you to do. If you say this to others, I'm sorry, but that is the laziest advice I've ever heard my entire life, okay? That generalized statement is reach out to publishers, shoot them an email, link your work. Well, duh, that's like saying, hey, if you wanna cook dinner, I would suggest going to the grocery store with your wallet. Come on, people, we can do better to help each other out. I reached out to at least 40 to 50 publishers from when I started my own channel and even up until now. Out of those 50, I got maybe 4 to 5 responses back that were pretty much generic responses of, we're not interested right now, but thanks. So for me, reaching out to publishers without a plan and kind of just like a let's work together mentality and statement to them, that doesn't really work. This means that you have to get their attention. And one of the best ways to do that is timing. And timing it right by understanding what to sell your product for. Let's talk about timing. Typically, if you are marketing for board games, you're interested in new games. Older games are fine, but in terms of marketing, it's probably already saturated with a ton of content by now. Let's say if you were Simon, for instance, would you be more interested in having a content creator make a tutorial for Blood Rage or have a video and photos done for their next Kickstarter, which at the moment is Masters of the Universe? Right? Their upcoming Kickstarter, the one that has no coverage yet, is probably the one that they are more interested in, right? So that's what you have to keep in mind. You want to find a board game company that fits your brand, that you're interested in working with, and also one that you want to keep up with their updates. If they announce that they have a game coming out, then you better put in work now because it is the best opportunity to do so. The same idea applies to retail release. When a brand new board game is being announced, you want to act on it. You want to follow the designers on social media. Timing is so important to marketing. Now you might be wondering, well, what am I marketing? It all depends on what kind of content that you make and what you sell or what you want to sell to the publisher. Let's start with photos first. Creative photos. These are photos that have props to accent what you're photographing. Not to dissuade you, but unfortunately, these don't sell that well. They have more of a different purpose. I'll explain in a little bit. Out of all the photos that I've taken, maybe 10% of creative photography has been sold. And that's kind of funny because practically my entire Instagram grid consists of these photos. We'll talk more about that when we go over social media, but Think about what purpose that these creative photos are actually serving from a publisher's standpoint. Because remember, the goal here is to market yourself, it's to book a client, it's to get paid for what you're doing and all the hard work that you're putting in, okay? Creative photos look good. They look very, very good. But what information are they actually giving to buyers? This photo is one miniature or one card or a few components. People are gonna love the photo, but we want to show more of our product. That's what they're thinking. That's what publishers are probably thinking. So to counter this, all of my creative photos have been sold around the time of a Kickstarter launch. Why? Because they grab attention. I think that's what the overall purpose of creative photography or what creative photography is best at. It's definitely the best at grabbing attention and kind of show stopping, right? It gets people to stop scrolling. It's always good to understand the purpose behind your photo. The purpose behind creative photos are more likely to redirect people to a Kickstarter campaign page. That is where creative photos will excel. So if you are marketing to publishers, give them an example of 3 to 5 of your best creative photos and say, hey, I think these photos would really complement your Kickstarter campaign or your retail release. I would love to photograph your game and I can take 20 photos of your game. And be really specific and do your research. Read that game's manual and see what mechanics you can highlight because maybe the designer has a blog and you can use those photos to highlight what they're talking about. Just because they're creative photos and they look cool with props doesn't mean they can serve a dual purpose. You can use that overall mentality for photos in general, right? Because they're overall trying to serve a purpose. I would even go so far as to curate your own photos to make sure that the colors are the same, that they're shot in the same style, that they're shot with the same game. That way the publisher can project and visualize their game shot in your particular style. A second way to use creative photos is, of course, for yourself. Trust me, if your website and your sell sheet, which by the way, you better have one. Here's a video explaining all of that and how to make one. But if your website and sell sheet look polished, using these creative photos, you are much more likely to book clients, book people. So in summary, if you are selling creative photos, curate 3 to 5 maybe of your best photos, time them in preparation for a Kickstarter or a retail release, and tell a publisher that these photos that you can take serve as attention grabbers for Instagram, whatever social media platform you plan to use, and include your price. I would really suggest that you consider setting a price for your photos because working for free for every single game that you cover, I hope one day will stop being the norm because it's a lot of work to get these photos set up and we should really be putting a price for the work that we put in. Okay, more about photos. Let's talk about the photos that make up 90% of my work nowadays. And those are studio or product photos and lifestyle photos. I have a whole series about how to take product photography, which by the way, I am totally wrapping up soon. If you want to learn that, I'll link it here down there. You'll see it there. These type of photos sell so well because now you get to see a majority of the product with a simple, clean background. Let me preface this by saying that simple does not equate to easy. Let's make sure it's straight from the get-go. Simple does not mean it is not time-consuming, and it does not mean that it is easy. Now, this type of photography sells well because it's like an Amazon listing, right? Just elevated. People want to see what they're spending their money on. Lifestyle photos, same idea. It's much easier and more inviting to sell a game when they can immerse themselves in it. Some distributors actually specifically ask for this type of photo where you have, hands in the shot to show immersion and size relation to the board game components. Now back to the main question, how do I market myself with studio and lifestyle photography? If you have a website or an Instagram specifically designated to show these photos, that's probably your best shot. You can still try to do the same thing with creative photos, with timing and giving purpose to your photos. But I would push it even more and say that, hey, I can take these photos for your game. I'd love an opportunity to help out with your campaign page. Here's my price. Here's a link to my work. Okay, all that was for photos. Now, what if the majority of the content that you make is for videos? How can you market yourself then? Nowadays, even if you make the best tutorial for a game ever, do you think that a publisher is going to sit there and watch your video for 20 minutes? Do you think that they're going to watch your vlog talking about what games you played this weekend? Do you think they're going to have time to watch some challenge that you did to a particular game or a review that you made talking about why you really like the card drafting in a particular game? There's absolutely nothing wrong with any of the things that I just mentioned. If you enjoy making those videos, please keep making them. But keep in mind that if you want to monetize the content, if you want to monetize what you're doing, then you're going to have to think about how you are marketing a product. And if you're still listening in, first off, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, which, by the way, will not be wasted because here is the ultimate secret behind marketing yourself to board game publishers. Information. Regardless of whatever kind of content that you make, if you are able to provide condensed information coherently, clearly, and engagingly, this is what sells. Cherry on top, if you can provide information beautifully, even better. It never hurts in the whole content creation world to know how to film, how to edit, how to make good looking videos, especially in a niche that is lacking it. Board game videos are lacking it. Now, to put all this in perspective, let's talk about tutorials first. You want to show people that you can make it quick. You want to show people that you can get to the point, and you also want to make it look good if you can, and then offer to do it for a publisher that is releasing a brand new game. Done. Try light games at first, because those typically have very generic tutorials that aren't that fun to watch, because it's literally someone reading a manual to you instead of talking to you. You know, they're actually like reading a script word for word, instead of like engaging with the audience and showing that it's much easier to learn a game when you are talking to the people you're teaching it to. If you show them your video that does that better, they're gonna wanna highlight that in their Kickstarter campaign. Now, obviously you wanna approach it nicely. Okay, don't say like, hey, this video is better than the one that you have. Book me. I never ever advocate for that kind of attitude. Okay, let's get that clear from the get-go. It's more so, hey, I would love the chance to make a video tutorial that is condensed and stylized for your game. Here's a link to one I've done recently. That's it. And just finish off with, let me know if you're interested. Thanks for your time. Let's talk about reviews next. Here are some video ideas if you like doing reviews. Obviously, reviews are not sponsored, but what you can pitch instead is a versus video. Old game versus new game coming out. This worker placement mechanic compared to another game. A preview video that keeps everything objective. Information. If you can provide information to the seller's audience, that is a way to market yourself. One of the best ways that you can market yourself in the board gaming niche. You probably don't see those video ideas yet in a Kickstarter campaign, because I literally just kind of thought of it as I was making this video. But in a general sense, if I was a publisher, I would love to book a content creator who is presenting my game in a completely different way. Everyone is going to advertise their game in some form that their game is unique. The videos that cover it typically should aim to do the same as well. Now, what if you don't reach out to publishers? Then how do you market yourself? Even more difficult, how do you market yourself when you have a, quote, small audience? Now I want to circle back to the beginning when I was talking about how, reaching out to publishers doesn't work for me. That is the perfect segue to social media. Let's talk about the 3 forms of social media and what you can do on them, the strengths and kind of the weaknesses of each. Again, adding on more to the last episode. Instagram, it used to be my favorite platform, but it's so muddled now that honestly, marketing yourself on Instagram isn't the best anymore. On top of that, Instagram just announced recently that they are more so a video platform versus a photo platform. Honestly, right now, I think that Instagram is just mostly good for having a grid. That way, it's easier for people to see. They can just look at like all of your work or the 9 photos that you've done recently, all in 2 seconds. Other than that, the traction that Instagram provides isn't what it used to be. I think Instagram is just best for, more so showing a grid, giving a very, very quick glance to your portfolio, and ideally redirecting people to your entire set of work using like Linktree or whatever link that you plan to put in your profile. I still, however, do get a good amount of publishers reaching out to me on Instagram because they've seen my work and it's still very accessible. So if anything, I think that maintaining a captivating, stylistic grid is good for marketing in that sense. But basically for Instagram, it's very hard for people to share your work conveniently other than reposting it to their Instagram story. If you post a picture of your last gaming session or of yourself holding a box, that's fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But let me go ahead and play devil's advocate and ask you, how can I sell that to a publisher? Again, information is key here, right? Because very often publishers will want to book you because they want to see their game done with your style. That's why I typically maintain a very stylistic grid, and that results in publishers reaching out and asking for photos and all of that. And if your rebuttal to my rebuttal for that is, well, I'm not, taking pictures on Instagram and posting them to market myself. If you're here watching this video all about marketing, then probably your intention is to sell photos, right? So I want to kind of pose those questions to you and have you think about what you're posting on Instagram and how you're trying to maintain a stylistic grid and how you're able to sell a product that people will want to buy. On top of that though, I've actually had more people reach out to me more often lately on Instagram stories. I make these social media promos because they're different. They hopefully get people to stop tapping through the Instagram stories, because when you tap through Insta stories, what do you typically see? Gameplay, right? Static photos, polls. If you make, videos formatted for Insta stories, people are going to stop. Even if you only do photos, you can literally animate that and make it much more captivating using different programs like Canva, for instance. I always talk about Canva. Canva's amazing. It's a good way to distinguish your photos, even if it is a static shot. Once every maybe 2 to 3 weeks now, I actually put out these promo cards talking about the services that I provide. You can also cut out clips from your YouTube videos and show highlights of a game or a live stream that you did. Video is and will continue to be, at the rate that the world is going at the moment, the dominating form of media, especially for marketing. Keep all that in mind when you are posting on social media. Now moving on to the next one, which is Twitter. Twitter has a way, way better way of reaching publishers. From what I've seen, more publishers are actually more active on Twitter. They can actually save you to their list of board game, content creators. There's a whole list for that, and you actually get notifications when they do that. Yes, you can bookmark posts on Instagram, but you don't know who is bookmarking you. You don't know if that's a publisher or not. Secondly, Twitter is great, I think, for traction. If one person thinks what you're doing is cool, when they retweet it in 2 clicks, now their entire set of followers will see that too. You can't really do that with Instagram, right? You have stories, but only 5 stories are shown at a time, and it's kind of random. If you want to market yourself, Twitter is a platform you should highly consider having if you don't already have one, especially since it is a conversation starter as well. Now, lastly is a website. What you should keep in mind at all times is, where can I send people to see the highlights of what I've done in one easy to access platform? Instagram grids and websites are probably the two best ones at doing that. Having a website gives you more freedom to highlight exactly what you want publishers to see. Cinematics, lifestyle photos, podcasts, work that you've done for other publishers, which is especially important. All that past work you can't really put on Instagram. That's why a website is way better at doing that. And on top of that, showing your past work establishes credibility. Even in my email signature, I will put links to things that I've done recently, because publishers will always want to know, and they always want to see, who have you worked with in the past? And that's how you build and establish that credibility. In summary, the best ways that I've found to market yourself on social media is to maintain a consistent, captivating grid on Instagram. Put yourself in their shoes. Do I want to book a creator that just posted a photo of, Cheetos and popcorn next to my board game night, or an interesting photo of my game that I can put on my website, that I can list on Amazon, that I can put on my Kickstarter that's coming up soon, right? I want to be able to visualize what that creator is making and my board game done in their style. Take that, put it on the stuff that I'm going to be using it for. That's why it's so important to maintain a stylistic grid. Publishers, your clients in general, will want to visualize what they are buying. Next, get a Twitter. It's great because a lot of eyes can see your work. And websites also make it as accessible as possible and as targeted as possible. Before we go, I also wanted to lightly touch on Facebook. Know the publishing status of games that you'd like to cover. If a game is announced on Kickstarter or that it's going to be on Kickstarter, here's your chance to reach out to publishers early on. There are a ton of Facebook groups. I'm not the biggest fan and probably the least active on Facebook, but in terms of networking, I think it's probably one of the best spots to find opportunities to cover games. Literally every week, every other day, I see a publisher asking for reviewers to cover their games. That is a good time for you to offer your services and to also keep up to date with what they're doing. Keep in mind that when you do get that opportunity, you want to make sure that you are establishing a great relationship from the start with the publisher, because chances are they're probably going to reach out again the next time that they come out with another game. So when you get that chance, do it well. If you are starting and you want free games, at least to start out with, not to maintain, but to start out with, definitely check out Facebook groups like Board Game Reviewers and Media. I think that's the first one that comes to mind for me. They're really easy to find. Board game groups in general for Facebook, super easy to find. Now, 2 more tips for you, and then we're going to wrap up this very, very information-heavy episode. This one is one that I wish I learned early on. You want to ask yourself who your target is. Is it a family game? Is it an epic miniature game? Is it a strategy game? If you narrow down exactly who your target is, not only are your pictures and your content going to sync up with that, but it also opens up your platforms for publishers seeking the same type of content as well. Unfortunately, as much as I hate it, but it is realistic, but metrics matter. I can't stand metrics, both in the board game industry and outside of it in life. I can't stand it. But realistically, they drive sales, right? They drive people to book you. You can put a really nice, movie level quality video in front of a publisher, but if that content creator has like 10 subscribers, they're gonna go with the 100,000 YouTube subscriber channel that made the video in about an hour. Now, I don't say that to discourage you, but rather make you aware of what generally works and what doesn't. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times I've had a publisher, tell me that you only have this amount of followers. Pass. It is what it is. At least when you know that, hopefully you can up the quality of the videos that you're making. That way you're able to market a product. Anywho, if you know that you like family games, if you know that's what you want to write about or photograph or film, then it would probably help to reach out to up and coming publishers as well, because it's more likely that they would reach out back versus a more established publisher. That's the only reason why I mentioned the numbers, because I feel like there's definitely a correlation between, a big audience versus a big publisher. It's just more likely that that certain publisher will reach out back versus a more established publisher. At least knowing what you like to cover and knowing of the companies that would be interested in that specific type of work will help you know your targeted audience. Bottom line, the best way to market yourself is to make your content shine. I mean, really, really showcase your work and what you do. Shine being interpreted in multiple ways, not just the quality of videos, but like the quality of information that you're giving out. As creators with like a smaller audience, we don't necessarily have the luxury to just make a casual video if you want to book publishers. Again, don't interpret that as if I'm limiting what you should and should not make. You can and should make whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. But to market yourself, to get paid for what you do, you got to put in the work. If you get a chance to cover a new game coming out on Kickstarter, and if you use that opportunity to do, what's been done a million times, sit down, talk about your thoughts about that game, that's not the best way to market yourself early on, because everyone is literally doing just that. From there, what I've seen happen many, many times, you're gonna step into this very, very daunting like hamster wheel, thinking like, why does no one want to book me? I don't want you to get into that mindset. Hence why I made this entire podcast dedicated to you, right? To help you avoid that mentality and instead work your way towards opportunity. You have to use that opportunity to take some next level photos, to edit really well, to show your passion for it, to show how much that you've studied the work, to show that you can present information in a really, really great, presentable way. It's a show that you're ready to put in tons of work to make a game shine. I can already hear some gray areas thinking like, but it's just a review. Why should I highlight the game? Why should I go the extra mile when I'm just giving my thoughts on it? Because that extra effort is going to show. Maybe not in that first review, maybe not in the first game that you cover or the first month or the first year, but every time you get an opportunity to cover a game, remember that you picked their game to work with, thinking that you're gonna match their style of work. It deserves to be highlighted well, along with your very thoughtful critique of that said game. And then the skills that you gain from covering a review thoroughly and providing very thoughtful critique on that, that's going to bleed into other areas of that you can sell and that you can market, previews and so forth. I think that the board games that you choose to create content on deserve that opportunity. And again, if you do that well, then that is a great way of marketing yourself overall. Before I booked a single client, I chose games that I was just 100% passionate about. And all of these passion projects really gave me the skills, the tools, and just different opportunities in several different forms that really added to this overall skill set that allowed me to book clients that I have today. Cinematic reviews taught me how to make those specific cinematic showcases. Non-cinematic reviews taught me how to be more efficient with my time. There are all these little skills and little very, very cool tools that you learn only by doing those said things. Bottom line, you want to make videos that people want to see. Okay, that is it for me. Remember that the goal here is to help you. It has always been like that since day one, hasn't changed. Hence why I made this, free masterclass in marketing yourself in the board game industry. Hopefully you picked up a thing or two that will help you along the way. Thank you all so much for listening in to episode 17, and let's book some clients.